Hello and welcome, everybody. Today is a special episode where we get to talk with Polyn, a traveling mother and world schooler. And I will let her tell her story here in a second. But first,
We just wanna travel the world, the world, the world, travel the world.
I wanted to bring her on board and let everybody get a second to know who she is. Hello, Polyn.
Hi, David. Hi. I'm super excited to be on Our Offbeat Life. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It was great. Actually, when I put out the feelers for this season, you were the very first person to contact me and say this is my story, and it sounded so heartwarming. I was like, I have to speak with her.
Thank you. I suppose the reason why I jumped on board was my son had decided to go off to America to go to school. So I'm sort of a very early empty nester. He's only 16 years old and he decided to take himself off to America to pursue an academic slash soccer career. So I was like, how do I fill in my time? So this was it. This is one of the options to fill in my time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to give our listeners a chance to get to know who you are. So I have a little lightning round ready. Are you ready? All right.
Okay, go.
Water, coffee, soda, or tea?
Tea.
Okay. Cat or dog?
Definitely dog.
All right. Man's best friend. Um,
Definitely.
Pool or beach?
Neither. I'm really not a baby. I'm Asian. We have a deterrency for water.
Oh my. All right. Well, how about country or city?
Definitely city now. I grew up in Australia on a farm and a cattle station, so definitely city.
All right. And would you rather have unlimited free flights or a magical RV that could take you anywhere?
Oh, unlimited free flights. The RV sounds like a lot of work. I'd have to still clean it and yeah, no, free flights.
Free flights all the way. Okay.
All the way, all the way.
If you could hop into a time machine and visit any historical event or era with your family, when and where would you go and why?
Okay. Genghis Khan, Mongolia, only because the man, in some ways, we're all related due to him. So I just wanted to know why he would want to be related to a quarter of the world's population.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting answer. Yes. So you'd ask the questions to Genghis himself. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you've got to get it straight from the horse's mouth.
All right, all right. Well, Paulin, your journey into full-time family travel began with a very emotional decision. Would you like to share that with us?
Thank you. I suppose the reason why I jumped on board was my son had decided to go off to America to go to school. So I'm sort of a very early empty nester. He's only 16 years old and he decided to take himself off to America to pursue an academic slash soccer career. So I was like, how do I fill in my time? So this was it. This is one of the options to fill in my time. We actually, to be truly honest, David, we didn't actually have a plan. Um, I have a bit of a philosophy in life, and I always say we jump without a parachute, and there's only two options when you jump without a parachute. Okay, you crash, fall, and die, but you're doing something that exciting and exhilarating, or you have a safe landing. And how that philosophy for me came about was I was 27 years old and I lost my firstborn child in a house fire, which is tragic. And I I have a I don't downplay it, but I always say that it was part of my journey in life because we all have sliding door moments. And if that tragedy hadn't happened in my life, I wouldn't be sitting in an apartment in Abu Dhabi right now. I would be back in my hometown, working a 9 to 5 job, feeding the bank its mortgage, and trying to save up for a holiday every year to take my children to some theme park in the world. And that would be my life. But I see the tragedy that I had as opening a door for me and opening my mind to what was available to me. And that was the choice of living or the chance of living. So when my son died, I was pregnant with my second son at the time, and I made a conscious decision that life was short and I was going to make sure that I lived my life and my children after that were going to live a life that their brother couldn't live. And that was to experience the world, to see things that he would never have the opportunity to see. And so we've sort of made it our family's pact that we try and impart that on people when we meet along the way. We always say to them, no one promises you tomorrow. So why are you trying to save for tomorrow? Why are you waiting for tomorrow? Um,
Right.
so that's where our world journey started.
Wow.
And during the way, we've met some amazing families, we've met amazing people. And like I said, we've also met some amazing world schooling families who've also made this decision in their lives.
Well, that story makes me definitely it really wants me to give you a big hug, my friend. Um, but it sounds like you
Thank
really
you.
tried to make it work. You give your sons that opportunity to see everything that their brother never did get a chance to see.
Yeah. Look, it doesn't work. I'm not saying it works for everybody. It doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work for every child. Some children need the structure of a school environment. Some children need the structure of a teacher. And this is the one thing when I speak to parents, newbies, new parents who want to homeschool or world school, I always say to them, you have to have structure. How you plan your day, how you plan your week, how you plan your month. You have to have structure in their lives. You don't necessarily have to have structure of where you're going or where you're going to end up next week or tomorrow,
Yeah.
but from the time they wake up, have some sort of a plan. And that's how it's always worked for us. No matter where the destination is, my children always had there was always three concepts in their educational life, and it was always academics, activity, which was some sort of sporting activity, and arts. And it was either so wherever we were in the world, those things were always adhered to. So activity meant, for example, we were in Bangkok one year and we did a bike tour around the city of Bangkok. He learnt about, the history of Bangkok. He saw the arts of Bangkok, and that was 4 hours of his schooling schedule. And when I say academics, the academics was he learnt about the history of the place. So I always say to parents, don't get bogged down of, making sure that they've got, the reading, writing, arithmetic. It's just make sure that you have some structure for them on a daily basis, and then everything just falls into place.
Yes. It all kind yeah, you're right. Once you have some kind of structure for them, it does. It kind of falls into place. We move around a lot, and when you change locations, if you kind of go in your same structure, you have your plan, like you know what you do, it kind of falls back into place everywhere you end up. The next space, the next space, the next space. That's so on and so
Yeah, and there are going to be dramas along the way. There's going to be tantrums both from a
yes.
parent, which I've had a few, and then from the child itself. But that's for me, that's the joys and the challenges of homeschooling and world schooling, is having those challenges. And I feel like that those challenges also equip our children to be better human beings, because like I've got a 24-year-old and a 16-year-old. And I find that from those challenges of not having a normal, per se, daily routine, it's made them become the adaptable, young adults that they've become. They've had to go with the ebbs and tides of their life, and that things aren't always going to go their way. So I find that when we give them this opportunity, we actually don't just teach them to be a better student. We actually are helping them grow to be better adults. Well, I would like to hope, David. Okay.
Well, you've got one that's an adult. He's 24. And how is he? Is he a better adult?
If he communicated with his mother more, I would say he'd be a better adult. But
All mothers say that, Joe. All mothers
to
say that.
me, oh, I'm not gonna say that. Yeah, that no, I feel like that he's genuinely a better adult. He's exceptionally considerate. He's very worldly in the sense that he's gone back to Australia, and since he's been back in Australia, he's actually realized, he said, Mum, I don't want to belittle my peers. He said, but the idea of seeing the world in a different perspective.
Ah. So,
And he says not only does he see the world in a different perspective, he sees the geopolitical environment of the world in a different perspective. Coming from Australia, we live on an island. Australia is an island. Everything is very insular. Everything's very guarded, I suppose. So when he was traveling, he realized that when we live in Australia, we're very privileged. You know, there are going to be different socioeconomic groups of people, but in general, living and being Australian, you are very privileged. And since he's traveled around the world, not only does he see that, in Australia, we don't have the gun violence that the US has. You know, there's no world hunger. Australia has never had to experience, famine or starvation. So he gets to, because he's seen the world, he gets to see how lucky he is to be back in Australia. And I don't think he would have seen that or known it had he just stayed in Australia.
I get that. I really do.
Do
It's a different lifestyle and a different like upbringing. So you see more, you do more, and that opens up your perspective.
Yeah, like I feel like that as parents, it is our role. And like David, I have to say we are very lucky. We're very lucky that we can choose this life. Not everybody can do it. Some people, um, we've always asked why do we do it, and how do we do it. And the thing for us is we chose not to have a mortgage. We don't have a 4x3 with a huge rumpus room or TV room. We don't drive his and her BMWs. You know, when we were in Asia, we were lucky to get around in a tuk-tuk.
Yeah,
We we stayed in shacks with the locals. We th- we made those choices. They were conscious decisions that we made. We wanted to create the memories with our children now and not wait until we're 60 or 70 and create those memories.
yeah. That I get that. That
So,
resonates with a lot of us. I mean, I see my parents and my grandparents and uh, travel when you're younger, even right now, my 40s, is so much better than it's going to be in my 70s or 80s. So
mhm,
yeah, so I mean, I'm a
yeah,
total
yeah,
proponent. Do it now. Do it while you can, while your knees give out, stuff like that.
yeah,
Uh,
that's it. While our body's still able and willing to do it, why don't we do it? Why don't we do it now? While we're not as grumpy with our children,
yes,
why not do it now? Rather than wait, like you said, waiting till we're 60 and 70 and we're dragging our, 40-year-old children with us, with their children. And it's just a total misery for everybody because nobody wants to do the same thing.
yeah,
So I always say to parents, while they're 2 or 3 or 4, drag them along. They can't say no. They're just going to have a tantrum. That's okay. That's fine. But just drag them along, see the world. And then at the end of the day, you know, sit with them when they're teenagers and go, well, what is it that you want to do? Do you still want to continue on this journey with us? Do you want to go back to, per se, what people consider normalcy? And then let them have that choice, because by that stage they would have formed their own ideas because we've equipped them with the knowledge, we've equipped them with, the I suppose their own ideals of what they want in life.
yes, definitely, yeah. And going back to the fact that you had to manage ADHD and other challenges. Um, how to
Mhm.
get folks out there who might have children in similar situations. Like I myself, I was diagnosed when I was like 5 with ADHD, and I know it was a lot of work for my parents, and that's always having to come to school, deal with issues, things like that. Uh, so, can you talk to those traveling parents, prospective traveling parents out there as to what you went through and what kind of strategy and routines proved effective, and that type of
But for me, I suppose when when I look at that whole concept, I realize that in the West, we were over medicating our children. As soon as they were diagnosed, the only option was to medicate them. And I started to look at my family in itself and went, okay, well, how many of my nieces and nephews do I know who lived in Asia, or people that I know who live in Asia who have children that are on the spectrum or are neurodivergent, and how did they deal with it? Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't generally, they weren't just medicating their children, they were looking at alternative ways to rear this children. Okay, so if this child, his brain works quicker than what it should be working, well, then he has a little bit of school, then he's out in the rice paddies working, or he's, building the boat with grandfather. And it was all about community and having community there to support you. So my biggest thing was I felt like that living in the West, we were all very nuclear families. We didn't have these communities. So I chose a country like Indonesia where my children could be brought up within the community. So for him, when he was having these moments, he would go to the beach with some friends or with our friends that we'd made on the beach. He would go to the beach and he would help them cook their satays, or he would help. one of our friends who was selling canoes. He would help them with his canoe. So we found ways for him to regulate and monitor what I always used to call them challenges. I don't like to put um, terms on him. And I would always say, well, they were his ticks, they were his challenges, they were what made him him.
Yeah.
And so I would find, yeah, I think for us when we lived in that community, it was trying to find ways for him to direct that nervous energy or the disruptiveness, as what people would like to call it,
Right.
in a more positive, challenging situation.
Right.
Um, so that's what worked for us, and I remember probably 6 years ago when we were living in Spain, I met a wonderful lady whose son was diagnosed with ADHD as well. And I remember her coming to me, approaching me because he was struggling with conventional school. And she said to me, she goes, will it get better and how will he get through all of this? And I said to her, I said, hang on a minute. I said, in about a week's time, my son is going to come. I said, he was diagnosed when he was 3 years old. I said, he's 19 years old now. I said, he's working in London, holding down a job. I said, he graduated high school, which we didn't think would ever happen. And I said to her, I said, that is your example. That is your positive example every time you look at your child and you're struggling with him.
Wow.
And I'm not belittling or saying that people shouldn't medicate. I'm saying that medication is, again, it's a choice. It's these choices you make. We chose the choice of me giving up my career and focusing my time and energy on our son. And some people don't have those opportunities. Some people don't have those choices. So if medication is where you have to go down that path, do it, embrace it. But I always say, try and have a look at what other opportunities or options are out there for you first.
Yeah, there are a lot of options and opportunities out there if you depending on your lifestyle, your comfort level, what you can afford. And some of these things, like you said, it's just getting them outside and playing. That can be done just by having like more uh, free time, taking them out of traditional school and setting up a curriculum where they have studying, a little play, a little study, a little play, a lot of life.
Yeah, yeah. And not to be so structured. That's the thing that's one of the things that I find that we try, and I use the word control. When we have children, that I always call them my little square pegs. You know, our little square pegs. We'll they're always trying to be controlled in some way or another. We're always trying to fit them in these round holes, and we keep banging and pushing and banging and pushing at them. But at the end of the day, if we just go and find another board that has square holes as well, they're going to fit perfectly. You
That
know,
makes me think about your travel lifestyle then, because uh, was it slow? Was it fast travel? Um, and like, how did you balance your travels with those education moments, that unstructured educational lifestyle that you were doing as well?
so we had a home base in Bali, and we would always come home to Bali. And I think having that sense of what was home for the boys was good for them. Um, we didn't really have, when we say travel, we didn't really have, I would say, a slow or fast pace. It was ad hoc. You know, as I said to you, our motto is we jump. So it would be the boys would get the choice of choosing where they wanted to go. Mum got the choice of choosing where she wanted to go. And sometimes it was simple as paper, scissors, rock, you know, um, as to who got their choice. When it came to education, I picked a curriculum that I felt would, if they chose to go back to conventional education, um, they could actually be graded and marked, and it was transferable to a general, a general school. So we chose Wolseley, Oxford,
Okay.
back in the UK, and I basically made sure that whatever requirements were from the teachers, they were met. So if it meant that he had to do an hour of math, he did an hour of math. If it meant he had an hour of English, and an hour of science, we did that. I made sure that even though their father worked away, he was part of their education process as well. So we outsourced physical education. We made sure that that was constant daily, that they had an hour of physical education daily. They had an arts or a language, and generally it was Indonesian and then Spanish. Uh, and then I suppose, how would you say it? The curriculum covered all the other things. And then dad got to pick, I made my husband choose what subject he wanted to teach the children. So he was in charge of geography,
Ah,
you know. Um, and I suppose I wanted him to be a part of the whole journey as well. Um, and to understand the joys and frustrations of what a teacher has to do for their children. And it was really good because it gave him an understanding of what type of student he was.
ah. Yes, teaching can teach you how to be a student too.
Yeah, that was just it. It was, like he realized that he wasn't that great a student himself. And, and his approach to his teachers wasn't how, because he was sort of like, he would put, and we would always say, look, when we enter this room or we enter this arena, we've got our teacher's hat on, right? When we leave the room, we're mum and dad. So the back chat was different to being in the classroom, as the back chat would be different to, being mum and dad. And no matter where we were, whether it was an airport or whether it was a hotel room, those 3 hours of academic learning, we had to adhere to them. There was no arguing, there was no putting it off to the next day. There was no, if it meant that we were traveling on a train for an hour, that's what he had to do for that hour. If it meant we were on the plane for 3 hours, that's what he did for 3 hours. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we made sure that we didn't deviate from the program.
Ah,
So for us, it was structured. It was structured learning rather than free learning. But in saying that, David, the kids, um, Lachlan's 16 now, and he speaks 5 languages.
wow. Wow.
Yeah. So that's from basically having him immerse himself with the people, with the culture, and he started to, rather than having to rote learn these languages, he actually just enjoyed learning them.
Huh. I mean, the impact on our children's growth and development is immense living this lifestyle. Like you said yourself, and all his languages. I know my son the other day just told me, he's like, I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish, I speak English, I speak some Chinese, and he's like, I'm learning Japanese too, because he's watching all these anime shows, and he watches them with subtitles on, so he's listening to the Japanese, reading words. So that's how he's trying to teach himself Japanese.
Yeah, yeah. You know, that's the only way we can teach them is for them to find the joy in learning themselves. You know, I think when we stick them in a room with a book or with structure, the I mean, we adults, we hate that ourselves. I mean, I hate sitting in a classroom having to learn "Me llamo es Polyn." It's like, seriously, I would rather be in a marketplace bartering and learning that that's an apple or that's an orange in Spanish than being shown a picture of it. So
I
I
100%
always
agree.
think of it as yeah, yeah. I always think of it as, if we don't like it ourselves, why do we have to make our children do it?
Exactly. And that's where, you pick up a lot from doing that. The stuff that you enjoy is what you end up retaining, I think. And if that, you're right, if that's the same for us
Yeah,
adults, it goes 10 times for children. Children are all about the id uh, personality. They're what they want when they want it. So if you indulge that with what they want to learn,
yeah,
the retention rate is skyrocketing.
mhm, yeah. I mean, I mean, I hate listening to the amount of people that say to me, "Oh, I was a bad student," or a teacher says, "Oh, that child is a bad student." The child isn't a bad student. We just haven't put that person in the right environment to learn.
Yeah, that is true.
You know, that's how I see it, is that society for many generations have put this idea of what education is. And that was the only way we could learn, was this, in a structured, conventional institution, is how I want to say it.
Well, I feel like I'm lucky because I was part of that earlier generation where they were experimenting with us ADHD children, and
Hmm.
but I did not get the perfect education for I think what I could have got because neither of my parents could have stayed home to keep us. It was just not in our budget at the time. But the school system really tried. They set up special classes. They gave us extra time. Like I had unlimited time on tests, and I had a special course class I could go to where I could
Hmm.
literally get my extra work done, ask questions of a teacher. It was as good as the school system could do at the time back then with the resources that they had. And now it sounds like you and my family, we can take care of our children in another way with the freedom that we have and the flexibility that we have because of the way the world has gone. Because now we can work online. Uh, there, we've learned how to manage travel and education. And it sounds like you've put a lot of effort into finding ways that work for you and your family, uh, in putting your children first.
Yeah. And this is what I want to say to parents who are looking into going on the journey that we're on now, or that you're on now, and then I've surpassed. But research is key. you know Research is key, because what works for one family doesn't work for another family. What um you know what works for one child doesn't work for the other child, and it's the same within your own children roles. If you've got multiple children, what works for one child isn't going to work for the other.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to find that balance. You have to be able to research what everybody in your family wants and requires. And I think, one of the things, David, is to be adaptable, to make sure that the journey you take, you take stock of where you are and where you want to go. And if you have to make changes along the way, don't beat yourself up about it. If it means that if you have to go back to your home country and the child has to go back to normal schooling, it's okay. You've equipped them with what they already need. Like, I read in some of our face group pages, and parents beat themselves up about it because they couldn't continue it for this length of time or that length of time. Even if you give your kids 3 months, it's a start. You've given them something already.
Yeah. I totally understand and agree with that. See, if you want to travel and you want your children to see the world, get this global education, become better global citizens, uh, if you can only do 3 months, if you can only do a couple weeks a year, do what you can do. If you're able to travel full time, more power to you. Uh, this
Mhm.
lifestyle is not for everyone, but I think people should experience travel. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, travel, especially in this day and age, it's an opportunity that we all have. Even if it's just traveling around your own backyard, traveling around, your own state or your own country. Just, you know, just just take that chance, take the leap, and just do it. And like you said, even if it's just for a month or 2 weeks, um, you know, do that. But I always say to people also, if you're going to do that, differentiate between vacation and home education.
Yeah.
Because if you're just going to do it for when it's a summer holiday for the kids, it's not the same experience. Everybody is on a break. Nobody wants to learn, nobody wants to study, and you're just going to keep beating your head against a brick wall.
Yeah. And it kind of goes down to another interviewer of mine talking to me about deschooling. So I did a lot of research into that as well. And before you really get into it, you have to have time to have your child reset before they actually get into educating while traveling. Otherwise, they might rebel a little bit because they're like, "Oh, I don't want to learn. This is supposed to be a vacation. We're traveling as a vacation. There's supposed to be like 1 month for every year. It's a minimum of time that you just don't talk about educating. You don't talk about, oh, you're learning something. Oh, you don't sit down. We're not going to teach. We're not going to read that for education. Do whatever. It's just fun for a few months, and see how it
Mhm.
goes. It's a
Yeah,
good way to reset.
yeah.
So,
Exactly. I mean, for us, it's exactly what you said. We would have theme park. We went to Disneyland, and that was our vacation. I disconnected, the children disconnected. It was like, well, that's our summer holiday.
so since your son is now grown up, he's now living in Australia. You've got the other one living in the U.S. How can you see their upbringing affecting, shaping their achievements or aspirations?
I I see that they feel like that they have a choice in their education rather than being forced into. So my oldest son, he graduated from high school from a conventional boarding school, and he felt that he wasn't ready to go to university. And I think that's when we said, okay, well, you take the time out. He took a gap year, which extended to a 2 year gap year. He went to the UK. He poured beers in a pub. He worked as a housemaster at a boarding school. He washed dishes at a care home. Um, not none of the things that an Asian parent expected. I remember having coffee with several mums, and their conversation revolved around university and which Ivy League university was my child going to. Was he going to Harvard, or was he going to Stanford, or was he going to Oxford? And I literally went, "Oh, Surrey," meaning a pub in Surrey. you know, and one of the mums said, "Oh, is there a university near Surrey?" And I said, yeah, Surrey." But we needed him to make the choice himself. And after being away in the UK for that length of time, he came back and he said, "Look, I want to do this. I want to go to university. I want to study international relations, look at cybersecurity because of what was happening geopolitically around the world." He realized that having traveled around the world, having some knowledge of different languages, that he would have the opportunity to maybe work within the United Nations and or even work in defense. And he realized that his viewpoint of the world, because it had changed, he can actually make some differences, within the defence policies in Australia. So, and he's found that while he's in university, um, his lecturers would always comment about he was a know-it-all. And I would say to him, I said, "Honey, take it as something good rather than take it as a negative." I said, "Take it as something good." And it was because the fact, David, he'd experienced, he looked at how an outsider was looking at it. Like, for example, the recent AUKUS program within Australia, the UK, and the US. Rather than looking at from a internalized perspective of just being within Australia, he was looking at it from externally, how this was not just going to affect um, the UK, the US, and so it was how it was going to affect the world. And I don't think, had he just had a conventional education back in Australia, I don't think he would have looked at it that way. I don't think he would have realised that he could develop some changes within foreign policy or, defence policies had he not lived and experienced the world as he had.
Wow. Yeah, so he's got that global
Um,
perspective now.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's when we take our kids outside of our home countries and when we equip them with all this knowledge, that, they become themselves global citizens. They become global citizens, they become world nomads, and I think, and I feel like that if we can have more of these children go into foreign policies or into politics, a lot of the world will be different.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
Ah, they're
yeah.
instead of centered on just their own selves or country, you can make the
Hmm.
world a better place. I know ever since I was a kid in the 80s, everybody's always been talking about ending world hunger, ending this, fixing this around the world, ending the world wars. But it all comes down to still what's best for my country. Now that you've got children that are more worldly, maybe the future will have more worldly impacted decisions.
Yeah, yeah. Rather than just internalized or viewpoints, these children, they become global leaders. They become leaders that think of wider issues that are impacting the world. I I have conversations. I've always recalled conversations with my children about things that are happening around the world and how they can change it. And part of I think part of world schooling, one of the things that has allowed us is to impart in our children that sense of giving, that sense of empathy. You know, we purposely chose to travel around third world countries, and part of that was not necessarily to show my children what they had, but to show my children what they can give. And one of the things that was created during our time in Indonesia was my youngest son. he created a project where we would ask family and friends if they would come to visit us or at his older brother's boarding schools where they would recycle their used shoes. And then we would distribute them to the local children, to the local villages. Because in my son's viewpoint, he was like, well, mum, like some of our friends only wear their shoes 3 or 4 times and they throw them away. Well, why should they throw them away when they can actually come and bring them and give them to other people? So I sort of felt like for him at the time, he was empathizing with the people that he was around. And it wasn't a matter of him feeling like, well, I've got this and I've got that. It was, well, what can I share? What do I have that I can share?
Wow.
And like David, if we were all like that, I feel like that, a lot of places will be a better place.
I agree. I agree. The world could be a
Yeah.
much better place if everybody felt like sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, homeschooling, world schooling allowed me to do that. It allowed my children to have that sense of everything's bigger than them. It's this world is bigger than them. It's not just them
Yeah.
in this world. Um, and one of our biggest takeaways from all of this is the the community that my children have. You know, we have built a world. We've built a world family in the sense that we feel like that no matter where our children go in this world, they're connected in one way or another with somebody else. That there's a family there willing to shelter them or to give them a meal. That's that they're not alone and they're never going to be lonely. That's our biggest takeaway from that, from here, from this experience.
Well, I know that at this point in the conversation, there's probably a lot of the listeners out there like, all right, so you've traveled so much for so long with both your children, and how are you financing this? How do you afford to travel all the time? One of the biggest questions that we get um, all the time out there. So for those that are considering this lifestyle, can you share how you manage to fund your family travels?
Okay. So my husband is our sole breadwinner. He's we chose for him to be our sole breadwinner. We sat down and we worked out a budget of what he needed to earn, and um, he wasn't allowed to deviate from it, from that income stream. But what we made sure was that even though he continued working, he was still a part of our journey. So my husband, we were lucky enough that he gets to work away. He works 6 weeks away or 8 weeks away, and then he has like between 2 to 3 weeks off. Now, when he has those 3 weeks off, it literally is he is off. There is no answering the telephone. There is no returning emails. It's his time to enjoy where we are in the world with us, and I always say to families, and choose where you want to travel. Like, you're not going to go to Rome, you're not going to go to Paris, you're not going to go to those expensive places. Like, have a balance, have a healthy balance. Um, People would always go when they speak of Indonesia, they go, "Oh, we're going to go to Bali." No, Bali is expensive.
It is.
Don't go to Bali. Don't waste your money in Bali. There are so many islands in Indonesia that will give you that same sense of cultural experience, but not with a high price tag. You know, that's what I say to people. Find a healthy balance. Go to Bali for 2 weeks, enjoy the lifestyle with your children, but then find another place in Indonesia where it's cheaper and more affordable and you can still experience the lifestyle. The same thing. Go to Thailand. leave the islands, travel north, hit one of the villages. Koh Samui is overrun. Chiang Mai is finished. Go to one of the smaller villages up north, find a nice little village, camp down for a month, immerse your children in the language and the culture, and then go back for a week of, tourist fun.
Oh, don't tell me Chiang Mai is
So
finished. I want to go back to Chiang Mai again.
go to Chiang Mai, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there research, do your research, find there's lots of beautiful smaller villages around Thailand.
Yes, there
Mate,
are.
with a tiny little pokey beach that you will have all to yourself that you're not sharing with 1,000 other people.
Yeah,
The, you know,
that's really good. Well, are there any specific budgeting tips or other income sources, or that you lived on, or was it solely your husband his situation?
to be truly honest, we've basically I looked at other options and other income sources and all of that stuff. But David, I'm going to be honest with you. We Our biggest goal was just me spending time and focusing on our children.
Yeah.
You know, um, I realized that I wasn't going to have this opportunity um, later in life, so we made sure that we were we budgeted. We looked at. I always say to people, um, check specials. See whatever specials. I think I joined every single specials group from Hit List to Travel to I googled every single cheapy easy way to travel. And I still continue to do that. It's like bred in me now. I go online on the Tuesdays or the Wednesdays to see whatever cheapies there are. Um, I always say plan. Planning is one of the things, one of the key things. Don't get don't get so caught up in the money. Having money makes it easy to travel, but don't get so caught up in it. That you don't enjoy the moment. And for me, like I said, I'm now ready to venture into, as my children said, it's mama's time now. So now,
Yes.
now for me, I'm looking at what other income streams there are. Podcasts. Come on, David, you can
Yes.
teach me some things from this. So now it's my time to learn and generate my own income streams, because I feel like in a few years I want my husband to stop doing what he's doing, and it's my time now to let him relax and enjoy, and I be the breadwinner.
Well, well, that's awesome. Talk about that for a second, because you told me prior to our interview that you were establishing a teen young adult mentoring business. How's that coming?
Okay. Okay, so it's getting there. It's slowly. So one of my reasons for wanting um, to create this career, I'm going to call it a career. Okay, so during my travels, I met many expats along the way, and what it is that while our kids are young and when they're teenagers, we drag them to all these wonderful destinations in the world. Many of them have always grown up in Southeast Asian countries. And then what happens is that when they hit university, we go, okay, well, we can't really afford for you to go to the US or the UK, so we're going to send you back home. So we either send them back to Australia. A lot of the times, what I experienced along the way, or I saw along the way, was a lot of Dutch families and German families. They send them back to the Netherlands, they send them back to um, Germany because it's cheaper education. But the thing is, these kids have never lived in these countries. They've never experienced what a day to day life is in these countries. So we're actually sending them away to fail. We actually haven't built them up to succeed, because all we're doing is we're sending them there to get an education. We haven't discussed with them, well, is this really what you want? What are the strategies you're going to put in place so that you become a success at this? Do you have the language capacity to, to deal with the day-to-day situations? And my son's going to kill me when I say this, but even my oldest son, going back to Australia from Indonesia, and just going, Mum, I don't have any clean underwear. Where do I go and buy it? You know?
Yeah.
And I go, at the store. What store, Mum?
Oh, we
Because
all of us boys, especially, I think. I don't know if the girls had that same problem, but us boys did. I I can't believe I'm admitting it on my podcast, but when I, when I
mm,
was growing up, I didn't actually buy any of my own underwear until I think I was around 22 years old. My mother bought them all
mm,
for me, or somebody else ended up giving them to me. It is a boy thing, I think. Same as
yep,
doing your own
yep.
laundry.
But
It's
no,
something you don't
the,
always grow
the thing
into.
is, Yeah, the thing is, we equip them with, don't forget, we need a visa for Laos. Okay, it's, X amount of dollars to Thai baht. We've equipped them with all these skills that help them on their travel journey or on their expat journey. My child knows how to go through the fast track lane of immigration,
Yep.
but we haven't equipped them to their next journey in life, and that's to become a young adult, either in their home country or another Western country. So I saw that there was a need for that, and I thought to myself, well, who else better than a world schooling and expat mum to be able to help these teenagers in their next journey in their life? So I realized that there are a lot of coaches out there, a lot of mentors out there that focus on the academics, on how these kids are going to work academically well. But we we don't always focus on how they're going to just adapt to a normal life.
Yeah. So
So I'm hoping to be that person for them rather than having their parents scream at them at university and go, well, why are you failing? Well, I'm failing academically because I'm failing at life.
yeah. Well, now, like,
You know, yeah,
you're well spoken. You obviously raised two young men who are going off and doing their own thing. You've traveled, you've done this lifestyle, you know how they think in this round. What's your background? Like, what's your educational background and that sort of thing?
oh, look, to be truly honest, all I finished a degree in environmental chemistry in the Northern Territory. And the day I finished my last exam, my mother rang me up to say, I have a job for you in the airlines. So I basically finished my science degree, never worked in it all, worked in hospitality and airlines most of my life. When I would have to say my my education has just been living life, David.
Yeah.
I remember my mum and my stepmom saying to me when I was growing up, and they said, you have to be able to educate yourself so that you can sit in a room and be able to converse with the president of a country as well as the beggar down the road. So I've basically taught myself that to be adaptable. You
Yeah.
know, I'm well spoken to you because I have realized it's a podcast and there's a varied audience out there. But if you get me back in Australia and we're sitting there downing a couple of beers, I can bring on my Australian accent for you. But I can also sit, in India with the local chaiwala and ask him about his family. I think it's just, yeah, it's just world education, really.
And world education. I love it. That brings us full
That's
circle. I mean, that's what this whole conversation's about: a world education for your sons, a education for you, our listeners out there. That's what this is all about: getting a world education. So, so Paulin, I
that's
did
it.
I did
Thank you
want to
so much
ask
for your
you.
time, David.
Well, I wanted to go before we leave.
Mhm.
I always like to do a little fun travel trivia, since we're all travelers here. So, got a second? Let's do a little travel trivia.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, we'll have to see.
I got 5 questions for you. So, Komodo National Park is located within which country?
Indonesia.
Indonesia. Yeah. All right.
Flores, to be exact, on the island of Flores.
Yes, it is. It's a fun place. You don't want to get eaten.
Exactly.
Name the nations that share the island of Borneo.
Oh, okay. Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Singapore. Have I missed somewhere else? Philippines, Singapore,
Brunei.
Brunei. Yes,
So
that's it.
you got Malaysia and Brunei in the north. You got Indonesia in the south. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
How many active volcanoes does Bali have?
2.
Yes, two. Very good. All right.
Yes.
And what is the largest city in Southeast Asia by area?
We're talking Southeast Asia, okay? Bangkok?
Well,
No?
no, I think Singapore might actually be bigger, not by population, but by area.
Singapore? Oh, yeah, the area. Yes. Yeah.
But otherwise, you might be right with Bangkok. Yeah. Um, what is the capital of Greece?
Of Greece? I would like to say Athens.
Athens. Look at that. You got a what, 4 out of 5 there. That was awesome.
Yeah. Would it could have done better. I'm Asian, remember? It should have been 5 out of 5.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
Look, my thing is just do it. Like Nike says, just do it. You can procrastinate, you can evaluate, you can calculate all you want, but it's not going to change anything. Just jump into it, do it. If it doesn't work out, there's always home to go back to.
That's true. Just do it. There's always a place to go back to. Ah, very good. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been amazing having you on board today, listening to your stories. Um, so
My
I,
pleasure.
well, I'm sure we will be talking again in the future. Take care.
Thank you.
We just wanna see something bigger than us, to see and smell and taste something completely new. We just wanna travel the world.